training webinar. It's not really a training, it's going to be more of a webinar. We're going to have an opportunity for questions, comments as we move through this. Some of the ground rules for today's webinar is, obviously please mute your phones, your microphones. If you have questions as we are working through the training, it would be easiest if you put them in the chat box or save them to the end. But if you're like me, sometimes by the time I get to the end of a webinar, I forgot what my questions were. So you can go ahead and put them in the chat box. So we'll just go ahead and get started. So we're talking about peer support certification. Hopefully today we'll answer your questions around why certification, eligibility criteria, the application process, approved trainings, and then have time for questions. So I basically wanted to continue to go over what is a peer support. Peer support is someone who identifies as an individual who has personal lived experience and is willing to publicly identify as an individual in recovery from mental health, brain injury, substance use disorder, or a combination. And I think the other piece of this that's very important that we don't miss, or they're a family member of an individual living with a mental health disorder, substance use disorder, brain injury, or combination of. I have the definition of recovery here because we have gotten a lot of comment on recovery and confusing the word recovery with sobriety. Recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve the individual's health and wellness, live self-directed lives, and strive to reach the individual's potential. And as I've read the definition of recovery over and over again, it is a very broad, sweeping definition, and we went with SAMHSA's definition of recovery on purpose. We want this to be broad and not specific, and not everybody's process of change and recovery looks different. And just a little note here, peer support has really been occurring across the nation for 40 plus years. I believe that the Medicaid reimbursement, started more in the last 20 years, but really it started along the lines with mental health consumer movement. So in the 1970s, there was a movement where mental health consumers started to find their voices in supporting other consumers of mental health. And then here in North Dakota for, I'm not sure how many years, but there's been parent-to-parent support. Myself personally, my son was diagnosed with epilepsy at 9 months of age, and I was referred to another parent that had a son with some health issues, and her and I are still friends today. And so that was roughly 10 years ago. And so it's just a different model than what we're exactly talking about today, but really no different. All right, so a little bit about the history of peer support services in North Dakota. And this is really from the point of view from the state, which we are with the state. So during the 2019 legislative session, North Dakota lawmakers passed several policies supporting the provision of peer support services. One of them was that we were authorized to establish and implement a certification program for peer support specialists, what we're going to talk about today. We were authorized to expand the implementation of the Free Through Recovery program outside the criminal justice system, of which peer support is a key component. The current Free Through Recovery program is continuing, which peer support is also a component of. And the department is developing a Medicaid state plan amendment to include peer support as a covered service for individuals of all ages with significant mental illness, addiction, or brain injury. So why is certification important? It really helps standardize knowledge and competency. It allows for reimbursement potential. We're going to adopt a uniform code of ethics, and it gives people better access to training and technical assistance. Some of the continued benefits of certification, though, are obviously, if you're working for any agencies, is reimbursement for peer support services. So the Free Through Recovery program, as I referenced earlier, the expansion of Free Through Recovery, which is scheduled now for a start date of 10/1. The Medicaid state plan, also 1915I, is scheduled for a start date of 10/1. So both of those programs have reimbursement for peer support. And then the other benefits outside of reimbursement include, the professionalism of the career. It's an additional career path for a lot of people. We're expanding the behavioral workforce. If you're an agency applying for grants, It's a benefit that you have certification of your peer support specialists. And then I just wrote down a couple of places where we really hope peers will be working in the future. You know, mental health rehabilitation, therapeutic recreation, emergency departments, community behavioral health organizations, the criminal justice system, and vocational rehab. And lastly, I think we all need to keep screaming this, but peer support is effective. It's been shown to improve the quality of life, improve whole health, including conditions like diabetes. It improves engagement and satisfaction with services, decreases hospitalization and inpatient stays, and it reduces healthcare costs. So now I'm moving into the pieces of the application. So talking about eligibility. And now if at any time you're like, oh, what did that slide say? Or, oh, where can I find this? All of this information that I'm sharing with you guys is already on our behavioral health website. And so I can walk you through that a little bit later. But the eligibility criteria are as follows. This is for a certified peer support specialist 1. So minimum requirements, you must reside or be employed within the state of North Dakota. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to live in North Dakota. If you're employed by an agency that serves residents of North Dakota, you're eligible for certification in North Dakota. You must self-identify as an individual who has a personal lived experience or as the family member. Must be at least 18 years of age or older. Must have a high school diploma or general equivalency. And then we talk about demonstrating the ability to read and write at a level proficient. And so I know that question is going to come up. And part of that is that you need to be able to complete the application by yourself if you don't have a high school diploma or GED to demonstrate for us that you have the ability to read and write and do documentation at that level that peer support will require. And then lastly, you have to complete a division-approved peer support training program. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to complete our program, but I will go into that more in detail later. And so a lot of questions that we've been getting recently have been around the differences between a certified peer support specialist 1, and then this is the eligibility criteria for a certified peer support specialist 2. So all of the criteria is the same, except for the bottom 2, which I've put in bold. You have to successfully complete a division-approved peer support supervision training, which we'll talk about that more in a few slides. But you also have to have at least 1,500 direct service hours as a peer support specialist. And so why would somebody want to become a certified peer support specialist 2? If you want to be a supervisor under the 1915 I plan, you would want to become a 2 if you don't meet the other criteria, or if you're working for an agency that is employing peers, they're going to need to have a supervisor. So ideally, in the behavioral health world, peers should be supervising peers. But we do realize that through the implementation of this, that might not always be feasible in the first few years. But just know that that's the vision and the thought is that a peer should be supervised by a peer. All right. So what you're going to need to do when you're looking at applying is go through our checklist. A peer support specialist 1, you have to have proof of your completion of the division approved peer support training. So your certification or your email verification or anything like that. And if you don't have that and you took it through us, you can ask us for that again. You need to have 3 letters of recommendation. And the letters of recommendation, you do need to use our templates, which are available on our website, because the templates ensure that we receive everything that we need out of the recommendation. So we need 1 personal recommendation, 1 professional recommendation, and 1 recommendation that demonstrates your commitment to the recovery process. And then we also would like a personal statement from you detailing how you will use your lived experience to benefit others through a peer relationship. And along with the application, you also have to send in a non-refundable application fee of $50. Right now, the application is not available online, but I will go through a little bit of the application with you guys more in detail as we go through this. So the fee does need to be mailed in, and the application gives specific instructions about that. All right, and then the peer support specialist 2, this is a little bit different. They need to have the successful completion of the division approved peer support training, successful completion of the peer support supervision training, 2 letters of recommendation, a personal statement. Their personal statement's a bit different. And then also an hours verification. So within the hours verification, we ask for a verification from a supervisor that you've worked those 1,500 hours and when you work those hours. We do realize that agencies might not be able to give, specific dates and times and all of that, but just a general idea. I think most people that are applying for the 2 have probably well over those 15 hours, but 1,500 hours. But if you're applying and have concerns about your verification, you can reach out and we'll hopefully be able to guide you in the right direction. But, given if you worked 40 hours a week or 10 hours a week, with, estimating how many hours of those week were you doing direct services, I think most people with their supervisors can kind of come up with a general idea. So we do talk quite a bit about division approved training programs. So if you end up taking a training program other than the Appalachian Consulting Group's training that we host, what you'll need to do is submit the training objectives and any accompanying information to peersupport@nd.gov. We'll take a look at that and let you know if that's approved. And there has been quite a few people that have reached out to us already with some additional ones. And so far, most of them have looked really great. But we do have some standards that we look at to ensure that it meets all of those for approval. The supervisor training, that is upcoming on August 6th. So if you take a look at our training link on the behavioral health website, you'll see that training coming up. But if you took any training that was different and you want to know if that was approved, you can send that to us as well at the peersupport@nd.gov. And same thing, we're just looking at certain criteria to make sure it meets certain objectives. There were probably many of you that attended the behavioral health conference in 2019. There was a supervisor training there on our last day, the 3rd day. And I know that many of you attended that. If you attended that, that counts for your supervisory training. Okay, so what we're gonna jump into next is the application. So first off, verify that you meet the eligibility requirements. Now I'm gonna jump into the application, so I have to stop sharing my screen for one moment and share my next screen with you. All right, and here is a copy of what the application looks like. So you're gonna notice here, please allow a minimum of 30 days for us to process your certification upon submission. You'll check what type of certification you're applying for. You can fill it out with your name, and it's all typable so that you don't have to write anything in this. The eligibility criteria, all of these are required to answer. So are you 18 years of age or older? Do you have a high school diploma or GED? If you're applying for a 1 or a 2, have you completed your training program? Yes. Now you see if it says, if yes, attach a copy. So there's a lot of checks and balances here as we walk through. Have you completed a division approved peer support supervision training? So this is only applicable to certified peer support specialists 2. So I'm applying for 1, so my answer is no, because you don't even actually have to answer this because you're not applying. Looks like it won't let me check out of that, but that's fine. Are you employed or reside in North Dakota? The answer is yes. You proceed to demographics. If the answer is no, we ask you, do you work for or have a job offer at an organization that serves North Dakota residents? So you live in Montana, but you have a job offer for an agency that serves North Dakota residents, or you live on the border on Montana and you serve North Dakota residents, or Minnesota or South Dakota. And then please just highlight the place of employment that serves North Dakota residents. The demographics section is all optional. If you don't want to fill it out, you don't have to. We ask about what substances you consider yourself in recovery from. So alcohol, other drugs, brain injury, or mental illness. Do you consider yourself a family member who has a personal lived experience? And some people might have both, right? And that's fine. And then if yes, select the type of experience you supported: mental illness, brain injury, other drugs, alcohol use. It could be one, it could be all, right? All right. Now here's the piece that we're getting into with the recommendation letters and personal statements. So all of your templates are here, so you can follow this link. It will take you right to the templates. Go ahead and give that a try. Now, when you're in there, you're going to go down, and here under certification tab is all the templates. So when you want to ask somebody to fill out a template for you, what I would do, for example, on the personal recommendation, I would put my name right here, save this, and you can email it directly to another person, and then they will fill it out. Okay, that way we don't receive recommendations with handwriting. These should all be typed in. We need to be able to read what it says. All right, so I'm going to go back to the application. So at this peer support 1, you need to attach your personal recommendation letter. This is your checklist. This is like, do I have everything I need in my application? Attach your professional recommendation letter, attach your recommendation outlining your commitment, and attach your personal statement. If you're applying for a certified peer support 2, here's what it's all needed for you. Verification. If you're applying to be a certified peer support specialist 2, you also have to attach your verification. If you're not, you don't need to worry about that. And then you're going to want to type your name and your date. There is a statement here, what you're attesting to by typing your name is that you're at least 18 years of age or older, you've given true, accurate, and complete information. There's nothing false placed on here. Also, as part of this application, you agree to uphold the North Dakota Peer Support Specialist Code of Ethics, understanding that misconduct may result in suspension or revocation of certification. The applications for certification and accompanying materials are subject to the open records requirement of North Dakota. By typing your name below, you're signing this electronically. So there have been some questions about the open records requirement. I think people thinking that we're going to make these all like public so people could go to a website and see all of this. And that's not how it goes. What's going to be public is that you're a certified peer support specialist 1 or certified peer support specialist 2. But what's not public is all the accompanying materials. A person would have to write us a formal request for that to be able to get those materials. Nicole, did I say that correctly? Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't, but I do know that in the past when we've gotten public records requests for like those kind of documents, they would go through our legal first anyway, just to make sure that we're following that section of North Dakota Century Code. So somebody wouldn't just write us a letter and then we would say, okay, you know, there's a whole process past that, but it is a formal process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then lastly, we kind of ask you again, make sure you have what you need in your application for certification, your training certificates or verification, attach your copies of recommendations and personal statements, and if applicable, attach your copies of verification of 1,500 direct service hours. All right, so we're gonna head back to the PowerPoint here. Okay, so once you've completed your application, including all required attachments, if you don't have your attachments done, please do not submit your application, okay? We're gonna have to return that to you. So Please make sure that when you submit your application that you include all the attachments. And lastly, you're going to mail a $50 check or money order to the North Dakota Behavioral Health Division and then our address. You need to include the name of the applicant, on the check or money order. So we have a process developed internally for that. But even if you email the application, great. That's a perfect way for us to get it. But just go ahead and mail the check or money order. If you mail your application to us, you just go ahead and include your check or money order with your application, but still write your name, the applicant's name, on the check or money order in case those two were to get separated. Okay. Lastly, just wanted to make sure that y'all knew about the new peer support email. It's peersupport@nd.gov. Please reach out if you have questions.
Hi, Lisa.
Oh, I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here, and I'll give an opportunity here for questions. So I'm just going to take a peek.
Just really quickly, if you are on a cell phone, I have additionally muted you. So there's a whole other step besides just unmuting your phone if you're on your cell phone. So if you have a question on a cell phone, you have to go push, I don't know what it is, if it's *6 something, you have to unmute yourself and then also dial a number to unmute it on our end. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the phone part. It's really hard for everybody to hear when somebody is on a cell phone. There's a constant noise in the background for everybody. So are there any questions that you guys have? Go ahead, Matthew.
Yes, I had a couple questions, but my first one would be with the supervisor training that many of us may have attended for the behavioral health conference in 2019. If we had attended, how do you get verification of the attendance? I was in attendance that day, and I personally don't recall having proof that I had attended. Was there anything that I would need to do to verify that I had been at that session? I was probably going to do the one in August anyway, but just that was my first big question.
I can answer that, Heather.
Go ahead, Nicole.
I was going to say, everybody had to register for that training. So we have the records of registration. So provided that you signed up as you were supposed to through that Eventbrite, we'll have you listed.
Jake asked, if we are registered for the supervisor training on August 6th, should we just wait to submit our application until then? Yes, you're correct, Jake. Just wait. Don't submit it early. That's more tracking for us to keep track of. Just submit it after you've attended.
Heather, this is Julie Metcalf calling. I'm really bad at keeping track of certificates and stuff. So I don't know where my peer support certificate is, but I did take it through the state.
We can get that for you, Julie.
Okay, thanks.
Bruce, go ahead.
Thanks. This is Bruce from the Association of Community Providers. And I was wondering, I was a little bit concerned for peer support specialists who apply and put their lived experiences on the application with the open records issues. I was wondering, could they put that on a separate page as an attachment and request that be kept confidential from the rest of the open records request?
There were discussions with legal about what you're talking about, Bruce, and since the personal lived experience is part of the eligibility and the application, it's all included in that. But as we talked about before, if somebody was to ask for an application for some reason on a peer support specialist, that will go through our legal department to make sure that we're following that, all those laws that are set in place. And I do understand that concern, but we weren't able to, have it not be subject to open records like most things with certifications and licensing. It's kind of similar to if a person has a social work license and there's an allegation and investigation about them and it's even found not to be true. all of those investigations are still open to public records requests.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Matt?
Yes. This question is regarding other trainings that individuals may have taken. And I don't know if this is a kind of a two-way thing for providers or peer support specialists themselves. But is it more beneficial for the providers to give you their trainings to see if they get approved, or is there expectation that a lot of peer support specialists will come in and say, here's the training I gave and here's what it was?
So if you're working for an agency that has a lot of peers that attended one specific training somewhere else, which I think that will happen, you can just submit, one person or the agency from the agency could submit that, and we could let you guys know, yes, that's approved, or no, that doesn't seem to meet this criteria. But yeah, I think that would even be easier for us. Then we wouldn't be getting all of those separate emails with the documentation if it was just one. And then if you just let us know, like, okay, there's going to be about 5 other people who are applying that took this training program. We're small enough here in North Dakota still that we'll be able to keep track of those things, and we'll have a spreadsheet with that information.
And I think for my situation, with our agency, we are aware of an individual that was from another state or two that had taken different trainings. So given the reciprocity discussions that were underway, I was trying to think about what would be the easiest track for everybody. Yeah.
And when you're submitting those other training programs, what we're really looking at is if you have a good a sheet. Usually most training curriculums have like objectives, and then have like what the modules teach you, so that we can see, oh, you're learning the 5 stages of recovery, oh, you're learning problem solving, oh, you're learning listening. The sheet that kind of demonstrates, like, at the end of the training you'll have covered these topics, or here's what we go over every day, even the module setups. That's helpful.
Yeah, in our case, we're going to have our people trained in our stuff, as well as a number of people that are already working with us have already taken the Appalachian training, including myself. But I was just thinking, oh, okay, we might have people in North Dakota that are coming from out of state that have tried different things. So
yeah, yep. And there are people here in North Dakota that have taken other trainings other than the Appalachian. I think there was another hand raised, but I missed it. So, oh, there's a question here from Ryan. Does the certification need to be renewed? If so, how long is it good for? Would the fee need to be paid again? Thanks. Good question, Ryan. It's good for 2 years, and there is a renewal. It's $50. However, and the reason why there's the renewal is we didn't talk about it because this isn't really part of the certification, but there is a continuing education requirement. So we have a continuing education requirement of 20 CEUs in 2 years, so 10 CEUs a year. So ensuring that you're attending training to work, to continue to develop.
Thank you.
If you're a supervisor, so if you're a 2, you need to be taking at least 2 hours of supervisor training biannually. Tamara asked about, is there guidance on what CEUs count? So we don't have that yet, but if you're taking any development courses, it doesn't necessarily always have to be very specific to peer support, but most human service type trainings, conferences, all of those are going to count. We will, if you have any questions, you can always send those into us. And how that's going to work is when you send in your recertification, you're going to attest that, say, yes, I have completed the training requirements. And then a small sample size of the applications will be selected, and we'll ask them for verification of their training hours instead of having every single person send in their training hours verification. Did that help, Tamara? Okay, just one moment here. Email the PowerPoint. Yes, I will email out the PowerPoint. Actually, what I'm probably going to do is just make this a public document on our website, and we're going to re-record a training again like this without the participation, so that it'll be live, so so it'll kind of exist there in the internet. Okay, thank you. Darcy, motivational interviewing training. Will that training be approved? Absolutely. That would be an amazing training to attend and use as the peer support specialist. I'm not sure which one you're referencing, but yeah, there's a lot.
Can I just ask?
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I just want to make sure we're not confusing training with continuing education. So when we say something like motivational interviewing training, that's not going to take place of the peer support training requirement. That could be used as a CEU going forward for that requirement upon renewal. But so just to be clear, the training for peer support is its own thing, and there's multiple modules from different states, and like there's different options for that. But it's not going to be like you're not going to be able to just take like a whole bunch of different education courses and then have that be that peer certification, peer specialist training. So just because we're using the word training, I think maybe in two different ways.
Yeah, and as we have done in prior years and as we'll continue to do, we will continue to offer annual educational opportunities for peer support specialists during behavioral health conference, webinars, wherever things go with COVID. That will kind of be changing the format for how we do things. But yes, we will also continue to do that as we did last year during the behavioral health conference. Bruce, I see you have another question.
Thank you. The association is interested in providing continuing ed along with some other continuing ed activities that we do. And so I just wanted to mention that the Board of Social Work Examiners is so efficient to work with for the continuing ed. Is that likely to be an approved provider for your CEUs?
Are you asking if the Board of Social Work?
Yeah, if they do, if Board of Social Work Examiners extend CEU status to a training, is that likely to be something you would take for CEUs?
I'm going to go ahead and assume, but if Bruce, if you want to work with us too, to send us those trainings, and then we can work to put our stamp of approval on them as well for you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Twyla?
Hi, I just had a question about whether or not this group, if you will, would be giving heads up on trainings that would happen, but you shared that there would be some opportunities. Given that, like for myself, I'm, you know, this isn't my profession and my full-time gig, and so just being alerted to things that are available to continue that.
Yes, and that's one of our goals, is to really, for Christy to be communicating proactively with you. So sharing, when you're on our list of certified trainers or certified peer supports, we're going to be sending you links to different trainings that come available, SAMHSA, BRSTAS, just all of those, so that you can kind of keep your eyes on what's coming, and also continue to learn about what best practices are in peer support. And yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Twyla. I just do want to mention though, if you read through the administrative rule, I don't have that up in front of me, but right now how it reads, there's a certain limitation of how many of those CEUs can be done via like a web training. But depending on what happens with COVID, we might have to make exceptions to that. But just know that we want to work with people and help maintain certificates as well. We understand the barriers that COVID is starting to put into place for people. Is there any other questions?
I think it's exciting to see this get going. So thanks for the update.
Yeah, we're really glad you're here, Bruce, and every one of you could attend today. Is there any other comments, questions that we have from any of the other behavioral health employees that are on the meeting with us today? No? Well, somebody said great information. Thanks for making this so easy. Well, I'm glad that it's easy. It really, we didn't want it to be complicated, and we do want to have that open line of communication with you all. So please reach out, email, please reach out, phone. We're continuing to host trainings. If you're on our website, you'll see that information there. We've had to change our format. So if you are working with or have friends or people close to you or anybody you know in the community that you think would fit into this role, please send them our way. Please get them on our website and registering. And as we'll continue to move forward with that. Thank you all.